Did you know on May 20th, 1930, the University of California dedicated $1,500 to research one of the oldest and most stubborn rivalries in sports history? And it's not a competitor that was on the field, but instead a tiny fungus living on athletes' feet. From ancient Egyptian warriors to Olympic champions, athlete's foot has quietly plagued the greatest athletes for thousands of years. And today we're going to dive into the surprising history of this itchy, persistent foe and how it shaped the sports culture, medicine, and even wartime battles. Going into the history of athlete's foot. Let's go! Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide as you daily learn more about sports history, increasing your sports knowledge as we dive into the history of athlete's foot. So what is athlete's foot? Athlete's foot is Tinea Pedis, is its technical name. No one really calls it that. It's all athlete's foot. And it's caused by different types of fungi. And there's different species of these fungi. You can have different kind of athlete's foot. I'm not going to tell you these ones because they are too long of words and I can't say them. Just remember, athlete's foot is a fungi. It thrives in warm, moist environments such as shoes that get really sweaty. It can be transferred really easily from direct skin contact from another person. It's mainly transmitted in locker rooms, pool, shower, places where you're not usually wearing shoes. And it can be transferred from contact on the floor, on towels, socks, shoes, all these different kinds of things. And you probably heard this if you went to college, that you were always told to wear flip-flops in the showers. This is the reason. It wasn't because it was slippery in there and you didn't want to fall down. No, it was because you didn't want to contract athlete's foot. But the condition is not limited to athletes. It actually went from athletes to soldiers to anybody. Anybody going through a public shower, anyone wearing tight shoes, not changing their socks daily. It really could go to anyone. It was not limited to just one person. Now it's shown to be higher in men, but that's mainly because men at the time, and even kind of to this day, are the ones usually using these showers, using these locker rooms, these facilities where it's transferred more than women. Women do get it. Women do get transferred the same similar ways, and it can go from men to women, but it's usually just higher population in men. And roughly 15% of the population has athlete's foot. So likely you know someone who's dealing with athlete's foot right now. And the symptoms are just dry, flaky skin, itchy redness, and kind of a pain when you walk because it's rough and it's just kind of an irritant. In some severe cases, it can cause bleeding, blistering, intense burning, cracking of the skin. But in most cases, it can actually go away on itself or use an antifungal cream. That usually takes 2 to 6 weeks for it to disappear. And most of these fungal creams are over the counter. It's become a thing that it's growing even more. That antifungal athlete's foot cream is almost a $2 billion industry today. So the first documented case that we have of something like athlete's foot happened in ancient Egypt, describing the similar symptoms to what athlete's foot is today: itching, scaling, redness. And Egyptian remedies were to use herbal treatments, but we have no idea if these treatments actually worked back then. They may have. We just don't know. So most Egyptians were barefoot. It was a barefoot lifestyle. Occasionally, the upper elite wore sandals, but most of all, they went barefoot, which limited the spread of athlete's foot, as the fungus of athlete's foot likes to thrive in warm, moist places in enclosed environments, which was not common in open sandal barefoot areas. But it was warm and hot, so they did sweat a lot, and a lot of the crevices did start to get the athlete's foot. And it's likely that cavemen and early humans encountered the same thing, as they would cover their feet a lot when it was cold and would experience similar situations. Now the impact was not deadly, but having athlete's foot would hinder issues for hunters and laborers when they were in serious situations and needed to walk and run away very quickly for a survival situation, and may have caused them to be slower or quicker to adapt to the situation. So it could have been a deadly type of thing. Now, athlete's foot popped up and was around throughout every century, but in the early 1900s is when it really took its place and really became a widespread health issue. See, with the urbanization of the 1900s in the industrial age, it meant more people were living closer together. It meant and there was more communal bathrooms, facilities, swimming pools, locker rooms, and shoes became more prevalent, which is a hot spot for athlete's foot. And in 1908 was the first medical description by Arthur Whitfield of what athlete's foot was. And in 1916, a documented outbreak among World War I soldiers due to the damp environment of the trenches being a hotbed for the fungal to spread. And athlete's foot is easily spread. But it's not till 1928 when we first hear the term athlete's foot appear in print, popularized by Dr. Charles Pabst, who noted that it was prevalent among athletes using communal facilities like locker rooms. And by that time, nearly 10 million Americans were estimated to have athlete's foot, prompting a public concern. You remember, this was early times. We weren't really sure what everything was in the medical field, so we were all learning at the same time. And the University of California really took this challenge on, and they were actually given a grant of $1,500, roughly $30,000 today, to really study athlete's foot. And they were able to find that 53% of incoming freshmen to the university had athlete's foot. And by the year's end, that had jumped to 78%, showing that it was quickly growing and highly contagious. And by the 1930s, this had grown among high society elite as they had more access to pools, colleges, and athletic clubs. So it wasn't thought of as a poor man's condition. Instead, it was thought of as an elite condition. Ooh, you have athlete's foot. You must be fancy. And it wasn't just athletes. Soldiers had the issue continuously, and even into World War II, where British troops actually tend to get it more because they had better hygiene. They actually frequently showered and changed their socks more often, allowing the pores in their feet to be open to getting infected easier. And almost 80% of soldiers in the Southeast Asia area had athlete's foot from the British soldiers. And for the soldiers, again, it was similar to the cavemen in the ancient times, with athlete's foot was not deadly, but it was debilitating. And a soldier focused on his feet itching and it being uncomfortable to walk and run may be limited in what they can do in battle. They may be a half a step slower, may react slower, may be distracted more easily, and that can be deadly in these situations where it's life or death. And this condition was so common by the time the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics happened, they actually had sanitizing foot baths introduced for all the athletes to limit the spread going on during the games. And at the time, doctors didn't know if it was spreading to other things, because another fungal infection that's common also is jock itch, which is very similar to athlete's foot, but spread less often. But we were all learning about this stuff and learning at different paces and learning exactly what it was. So athlete's foot is a bad rap for athletes because it's not just athletes. It's everyone that has it, but it really kind of focuses on athletes because a lot of athletes do get it. We're wearing shoes, we're sweating in shoes, we're dealing with other people that could have it. It's a very common occurrence, but it's not a deadly thing. It's just a nuisance kind of thing. But it can be very nuisance. But if you've ever had it, you understand, like, the itching is annoying, the flaking is annoying, it looks bad. It's not something we ever want to have. But we all have to deal with it. And it's got a long history of being around for ages. But it's interesting that sports has its own disease. And there's actually some other diseases we might cover, such as staph and MRSA, that are associated with athletes as well, that we might cover on another episode. And I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. If you like this, please make sure you are subscribed or follow wherever you're listening. That way you do not miss an episode. And come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.